Members, if we can resume here. It's time for questions to the Minister for Education. Question 5 and question 9 have been withdrawn. I call Alan Chambers.
Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the 23rd of May 2025, Ards and North Down Borough Council accepted proposals to treat amendments to facilitate the inclusion of enhanced learning support provision at the school as a non-material change to the existing planning permission. Therefore, it is anticipated that construction will commence in early 2026. However, this is dependent on the relevant approvals being obtained.
Mr. Chambers.
Minister, absolutely delighted to receive that update, and certainly looking forward to work commencing on that much needed new build. But would the Minister have any concerns that a brand new primary school in that area could have a negative impact on the enrolment of the nearby Bloomfield Primary School?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I can understand in every new build what could the implications be for neighbouring schools, and we have been carrying out a significant investment within the North Down area. One of them is going to be the Crawfordsburn Primary School, in terms of another major construction works which is due to commence actually next month in July, and we've got a number of school enhancement programmes as well that we're wanting to take forward, and minor works programmes. All of these are there to try and improve the school estate. Ultimately, wanting to support all schools is what I want to do as Minister, but I think this is a good news story that we're able to move forward with the particular build at Bangor Central Integrated Primary School. It's where I went to announce a series of major new builds, and obviously there's been some issues that we required to look at, but we are now able to make progress.
Stephen Dunn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank the Minister for his commitment to this school and other schools within North Down, and I know the Minister visited the school with me last year. Can the Minister advise why there has been a revision to the technical design of this project for Bangor Central Integrated?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I kind of thank Mr. Dunn for that question. I know he has advocated for the investment in this particular school and other schools within North Down. As part of the announcement to take forward the new build, officials did identify, though, that there had been a steady decline in pupil numbers, which was more in line with a 17 class enrolment band rather than the 22 class school which had been approved. Having engaged with the school, we identified a best way forward to right-size the school based upon the need within the community, and that is to deliver a 17-class primary school, but we will be including the provision of 4 classrooms for pupils with special educational need, as currently there is a need for SEN accommodation. So therefore the school can go ahead as planned, but with this adaptation to it to accommodate children with special educational needs, and I know that's something that the member will welcome.
Mr.
Speaker, Minister, can we have an update please on the schools which lost Fresh Start funding about 15 months ago when the executive first returned? I declare an interest. My child is a pupil at one of those schools, but it would be helpful to have an update on what is happening.
Can I thank the member for that question? Obviously there were a number of schools which were announced that we were taking forward in terms of construction in respect of that. Sorry, I just don't have to hand the particular information. The ones that we are taking forward, Millennium Integrated is one of which the construction contract has been entered into, and works are expected to commence next month on that particular school. So we did move forward in relation to Millennium Integrated. I know that there were other schools that were part of that Fresh Start. What I was able to do is provide them with assurances that they are part of my overall departmental capital programme, and that has allowed them to continue to progress. But in particular, within his own constituency, I was able to move forward on Millennium Integrated, and construction will commence imminently.
William
Question number 2, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A technical feasibility report has been completed by the integrated consultant team, which identified options and costs to provide suitable accommodation for Tandragee Junior High School. A review of the options identified in the report was completed by the Department's technical advisors in September of last year, and a business case to identify the preferred option to be taken forward in design is currently now being drafted.
Mr. Irwin.
Can I thank the Minister for his response? Are there any other ongoing works at the school, given the length of time that the school will be remaining in their current premises?
Minister.
Well, can I thank the member for that question, and I know he has advocated for Tandragee Junior High School and other schools within his constituency, and I'll be meeting him later in respect of Market Hill High School, which he has been an advocate for work and support with that particular school. Obviously, it is progress that we're moving towards the business case being able to bring that particular next phase to a conclusion. But there are still, as the member understands, a number of stages that we need to progress to the point at which it will be subject to capital funding being made available. So in the interim, we'll continue to support Tandragee Junior High School, and from April of 2022, we've responded to 177 tasks, around £55,000 spent. There are 19 planned tasks that we will take forward. That is estimated to be in the region of £150,000 of work that we will seek to provide to the school. So it is important that as we make progress through the various stages for the Tandragee Junior High School, that we continue to provide support as part of that ongoing maintenance works, and that's what we intend to do.
Mr. McNulty.
County Cork, in relation to another Orma education facility, I've written to Minister on Tiny Tots in Clady, where after a health and safety inspection, their premises have been deemed not fit for purpose, and the neighbouring school, St Megas, wants to accommodate the new facility, new premises. The GA Club has accommodated them where they are for the last 25 years.
Get the
doing a wonderful
please.
service. Will you be pulling out all the stops to ensure Tiny Tots has appropriate accommodation ready by the new school year in September?
Sir.
Well, a response will issue to the member today on that particular issue. I absolutely understand the dilemma that they're in. However, when it comes to the provision of preschool in this particular situation, it is not a legal obligation on the Department of Education to provide support in that respect. What I would say is engage with the Education Authority. Seek to get support from them if that is an opportunity where they can intervene, because obviously preschool provision is important and working with the providers is an important role that the Education Authority has. So that is where I would direct the member to.
Alan Robinson.
Question number 3, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Speaker. The purpose of this programme is to target investment in priority areas that will support and enhance delivery of the Northern Ireland curriculum. The initial focus of the programme in 2024-25 has been the refresh of desktop computer equipment in post-primary and special schools with an expenditure of £5.9 million, provision of outdoor play equipment and resources at all preschool, nursery and primary schools with, to date, an expenditure of £2.4 million, and procurement has also completed for the provision of defibrillators to all schools in Northern Ireland currently without them, and I expect rollout of these to commence in the coming weeks. In regard to the physical education provision, under the programme, a survey was undertaken of post-primary schools which received 125 responses, and this identified 31 schools without a sports hall and 71 without a synthetic pitch. So my officials are now currently working on the selection, procurement and delivery of an initial tranche of pitches and on the selection of an initial tranche of sports halls to advance into planning. In regard to the pilot exercise for covered sports, my officials are working with professional colleagues on the range of provision that's available and will move shortly to a call from primary schools for nominations for inclusion within the initial pilot programme of 20 schools.
Mr. Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm very grateful to the Minister for that response. Could he provide some additional information? What is the current position regarding synthetic pitch provision?
Minister.
Well, can I thank the member for that question, and I know he has been an advocate for investment in schools within the East Londonderry constituency, that I would hope will be able to avail of this capital funding programme. Currently, there's work with the colleagues in the EA and within the construction and procurement delivery in terms of selection, procurement and the delivery of the initial tranche of pitches. 71 post-primary schools have been identified as not having a synthetic pitch, and whilst the capital budget I have will not permit me to bring forward all 71 at one time, my officials are working to group the identified schools into tranches. This will ensure this need is addressed in a managed way over a number of financial years within the capital budget that is available to me.
Guy.
Speaker. Minister, given that only 8% of primary school and 20% of post-primary school pupils receive the recommended 120 minutes of PE per week, what difference will the curriculum-led capital investment programme have on these figures?
Minister.
Well, the member rightly outlines the need when it comes to the 120 minutes, 2 hours of PE, and in many examples, unfortunately, schools are not meeting the required 2 hours that we would want them to do. Part of the reasons for that has been the lack of facilities. And so when we were choosing what part of the curriculum should be prioritised, because a case could have been made for home economics, for example, or science labs, why was it the provision of synthetic pitches, sports halls, covered outdoor play? Because that was the one area that we identified a real lack of provision right across Northern Ireland, and therefore rolling this programme out will undoubtedly enable schools to have the kind of facilities that they need to enrich the offering that they have when it comes to PE. And so I want to see the number of people reaching that 2 hour being driven up. That's why there's a focus on this particular aspect of the curriculum-led capital programme.
Patsy Midlone.
Thanks to the Minister for his response. Minister, could you clarify, please, how the curriculum-led capital investment programme will address some of the long-standing infrastructural inequalities between sectors, especially for the Irish medium schools, which have failed to receive enough capital investment despite growing enrolment and demand?
Minister.
Well, this scheme is applicable to every sector. So whenever the call goes out, and it is a limited amount of funding that is being allocated to the curriculum-led capital programme, it's in the region of around £10 million. There are other capital works when it comes to major new builds, to school enhancement programmes, to minor works, all of which continue to face significant demands with a lack of resource to meet the need that I would want it to be doing. This is to give a specific focus to this element of the curriculum, and that will be available for all schools to be able to make an application to. One of the Irish medium schools that I was able to take forward was School in Drogheda, which is in South Belfast, and that was part of the one of the 7 schools that I announced for a new build in order to meet the need for the particular school that is required there, and I'll continue to apply that approach in future.
John McElveen. Sure.
Mr. Speaker, earlier this week I was pleased to launch an independent review of assessment. The panel is chaired by Tim Oates, CBE, former Director at Cambridge Assessment, alongside Gary Matheson, who is the former Principal of Holy Family Primary School, and Dr Mick Walker, the former Director of the Qualifications and Curriculum Authority. It is critical to ensure our assessment system is fair, reliable and aligned to international best practice, providing clear insights into student outcomes. The review will examine assessment throughout primary school and at Key Stage 3, and will over coming months be engaging with education stakeholders across Northern Ireland. The review will look at best practice within and beyond the United Kingdom and undertake a strategic assessment of current arrangements, identifying strengths and areas for improvement, in order to make detailed proposals about the future purpose, nature and design of assessment in Northern Ireland. This review is a vital step towards an evidence-informed world-class education system in Northern Ireland that is excellent, equitable and responsive to the needs of all of our young people. While this review is carried out, it is important to have consistent and reliable interim arrangements. Therefore, on the 19th of March, I announced interim arrangements for statutory key stage assessment for the 3-year period from the 25-26 academic year. The new system-level sample assessments will evaluate the literacy and numeracy of pupils at the end of key stages 1, 2 and 3. The assessments will be developed and delivered by SIA. They will provide insights into learning outcomes across the education system and will play a vital role in shaping educational policies and interventions. The assessments will be taken by a sample of pupils and will be used to identify national trends in education performance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Minister for his very full answer. Can I ask the Minister what level of participation did this year's statutory assessment have, given that industrial action and the Department's decision came after teacher-directed time budgets had already been agreed?
Sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and can I thank the member for that particular question. Industrial action has had a varied impact on conducting assessment within the context of the interim arrangements for 24-25 academic year. However, given that assessment is a statutory requirement and should be an integral element of teaching and learning, it was still reasonable to ask teachers to comply. The information that has been returned by schools for this year will be extremely useful to be able to compare the teacher-assessed outcomes this year with the outcomes of next year's system-level sample assessment. And I want to put on record my thanks for those schools who did participate, and it was a much significant higher level than we anticipated, and I think is a demonstration of a willingness within our educational profession to move forward as we emerge out of that long protracted period of industrial action.
Blair.
Question number 6.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, my department is progressing an update to the Supporting Pupils with Medication Needs guidance in collaboration with the Department of Health and the Education Authority. Officials have met with parents and organisations representing pupils with allergies, including Food Allergy NI and the Benedict Blythe Foundation. The information shared at these meetings is being considered as part of the review of the current guidance.
Mr. Blair.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker, and thank the Minister for that reply. Can I ask further to that if the Minister could tell us what changes, if any, will be implemented by the EA in time for the new school year?
Well, Mr. Speaker, as we take forward the work in respect of this, because it is a hugely important area, and it's one where there's a lack of data. We know, from census figures the number of young people, for example, that have anaphylaxis, but it isn't properly captured in the education data. So schools do, particularly through their catering services, ensure, for example, that meals and menus are screened for allergen content before they're being used. And obviously, when it comes to the various different special dietary needs, it is something that I know catering staff within the Education Authority do take very seriously, and schools, when it comes to their policies, do take seriously. But it's an important piece of work that we're doing to update the current procedures to make sure that the right support is being made available.
Carl.
Mr. Speaker, I recognise that this is an important health issue which is clearly of concern to many young women and which should be dealt with in a respectful and inclusive manner. Wellbeing and health are core to the Northern Ireland curriculum, which aims to empower young people to develop their potential and to make informed and responsible decisions throughout their lives. In terms of health, the Northern Ireland statutory curriculum statements of minimum entitlement ensures that schools are able to respond to important updates in health messaging and priorities by adapting and including resources to best meet the needs of their learners. My department is committed to supporting the development of young people's health literacy, including the understanding of menstrual conditions in a sensitive and age-appropriate manner. Endometriosis falls under the umbrella of period dignity, and from Key Stage 2, which is ages 8 to 11, onwards, all pupils should be learning age-appropriate and accurate scientific facts about periods and be having open conversations about them. And this can help to break common taboos about periods, prevent stigma and reduce negative perceptions and behaviours. SIA has published a number of resources for primary, post-primary and SEND pupils on period dignity and menstrual wellbeing, which are available to download on the Period Dignity Hub. There are also accompanying films and posters for primary and post-primary on period dignity and menstrual well-being. Regarding endometriosis specifically, Unit 5 within the post-primary suite of resources covers both endometriosis and PCOS and can be accessed via the SIA website.
Mr. Carroll.
Thank you, Minister, for that answer. And I hope the Minister would agree with me there's a lack of services, including no NHS-funded centre for endometriosis treatment, despite efforts made by campaigners. Can the Minister detail whether the Department or the EA or schools have a database of the amount of days missed by people suffering from endometriosis? And we also support greater work for endometriosis advocacy groups to try to get into school, to talk about the Unit 5 resources and other resources to make people more aware of the condition. Thank you.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it is an area that I know the Education Authority do take seriously, and I think I've outlined in detail the level of support and resources that are being made available within SIA. Where it comes to collecting data and information in respect of this, yes, it's an area that I think we need more information on. I don't believe that we have sufficient information, but it is an area that we are working towards providing better support in, so that we can deal with these issues more effectively than what they are to date.
Peter Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question 8, please.
Minister.
I am able to confirm that work to create a new controlled schools unit within the Education Authority is underway, and it is anticipated that this unit will be operational for September of this year and the start of the new school year.
I want to thank the Minister for his answer and his ongoing support for controlled schools across Northern Ireland. Can I ask him, does he believe that the new controlled schools unit will deliver greater equity for the 150,000 children in these schools?
Mr. Speaker, this is the start of a process of providing the support to the controlled sector, which has been absent for many years. The first phase of this is the establishment of the controlled sector unit within the Education Authority, and the second phase of this is to bring forward legislation into this Assembly in order to provide a managing authority for controlled schools. That is an executive paper which I have now issued to colleagues for them to consider. The basis upon which this is a necessity and is required is very much grounded in the Independent Review of Education. That report highlighted complicated systems for school management, which are in particular suboptimal for the controlled sector, and proposed that sectors should be supported with greater consistency and equity. It outlined the perception of controlled school leaders that EA is stretched too thin and is conflicted by servicing all school types, leaving the controlled schools relatively unsupported. So in September of last year, I established a Controlled Schools Task Force to provide a model for a dedicated managing authority for controlled schools, alongside the identification of key performance issues and required improvements for controlled schools under the current model. So this is a welcome development, and it's one that's long overdue. Other sectors have their own standalone managing authority. CCMS, for example, provides that support to the Catholic-maintained sector. The controlled schools do not get the same treatment when it comes to equity, and they don't get the same services. And the controlled sector is a diverse group of schools across Northern Ireland, between nursery, special schools, and indeed including Irish medium schools within it, and it requires better support than it has received.
Matheson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and just declare an interest as a governor of a controlled primary school. Can the Minister confirm in this mandate, will he start progress towards the establishment of a single management authority for all schools in the system in Northern Ireland, as was recommended by the Independent Review of Education?
I think, Mr. Speaker, that's certainly something that I would be supportive of. But the starting point in this has to be addressing the inequality that currently exists. And there isn't equity for controlled schools. It is suboptimal. Not my words, but the Independent Review of Education, informed by those principles within controlled schools. And for those who engage within the controlled sector, they will know that they do not receive the support that they should receive, because the EA is there to provide services to all schools, but has a unique function to be the managing authority for controlled schools. That has been diluted and has not been given the requirement and support that it is needed, and that's why controlled schools have been left behind. And I don't believe that those who advocate for equality and fairness in our education system would be opposed to addressing that inequality, and that can create the opportunity for more consistency, and where there is a willingness to move to a single managing authority whereby the Catholic maintained sector, grant maintained integrated sector, controlled sector are all willing to move forward to create one single managing authority, that is certainly something that I would be supportive of. But we cannot move at a pace which leaves back one particular sector with the current inequality in pursuit of that single authority. Let's address the inequality, and then let's move to the next phase of that, which will get my support for a single managing authority. But that is one that will require all of the stakeholders in education from all of the sectors being willing to come forward to support a single managing authority for all schools.
Andy Allen. Sure.
My department does not own any surplus sites. However, the Education Authority, who are responsible, are in ownership of 10 such sites which have been declared surplus, and they are planned for disposal within this financial year and also the 26-27 financial years.
Mr. Allen.
I appreciate the Minister said that his department doesn't directly own any land or building surplus to requirement, but can the Minister perhaps outline to this House whether he would support surplus to requirement land or buildings that is no longer required for educational purposes being utilised to tackle our social and affordable housing crisis?
So, Mr. Speaker, I absolutely believe that where we no longer have an educational purpose, which is the starting point for any surplus buildings, that they should be disposed of. There's a process for disposing of that, but included within it is going around all of the other departments first before you would put it on the open private market, that you would highlight the ability for other departments, including the Department for Communities, if there was a need for housing, if this was something that they would be able to avail of. After that process, then you do make it open to the private market. It is not in anybody's interests for the state to be continuing to retain ownership of buildings which are now surplus to requirement. But part of the reasons that there has not been the same number of former school sites becoming available for disposal is because of the increasing need around special educational needs and the potential to repurpose some of those vacant buildings to fulfil that requirement. But I certainly share the member's sentiment.
John Buckley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Minister, quite often these very buildings could be really put to good use for local communities. I cite a number of examples that I've engaged with your department on, albeit it is through the EA. Minister, it's a sad reflection that sometimes with EA the length of time taken means that these buildings fall into significant disrepair. Would you agree with me the need to speed up the process?
Minister.
Listen, I share the frustration that the member has highlighted. One setting, for example, in my own constituency, the former Revarnet Primary School site, is one of the 10 schools that are now on the list for disposal in the 26-27 year. That has been many years in the process to get to the point where it's even going to be available for disposal. And in the meantime, it has become an eyesore within the community. That is replicated in many other areas across Northern Ireland. So the processes for identifying either an educational purpose or another public sector purpose does need to be improved. And following that, then, you need to be able to move to disposing of it and allowing the private market to acquire these sites to make it used for another purpose.
Question 11,
please.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, my department has invested in the educational psychology workforce and is currently funding 40 places on the Doctorate in Educational Child and Adolescent Psychology course at Queen's University in Belfast. 14 of these students will graduate this year, and they will join the staffing complement in the Education Authority's Educational Psychology Service. In addition, the Education Authority has removed Education Psychology Service gatekeeping for access to support services, which will allow more time for psychologists to complete statutory work, capacity building and early intervention.
Mr. McLone.
Yep. Thanks very much. That's welcome news, Minister. Would you have any idea yet just as to what the waiting lists are and when these people, these new appointees, will make a meaningful impact upon those?
Well, the length of time that it takes for assessments to be carried out are unacceptably too long. That's why we've invested in providing more people into the workforce through this doctorate scheme that we have been providing support. It's also why I made the application to the transformation programme around SEN reform and a delivery plan, which we secured just over £27 million to allow us to take forward. That will allow us to stand up more support when it comes to educational psychologists to meet the current demand, but also when it comes to setting up local impact teams, for example. This is all designed to try and improve the current performance, which I believe is not adequate, and it is the young people who are suffering because of that. But it will take some time for us to see the benefits of the investment that we're now putting in.
Moving to topical questions, call Matthew O'Toole.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Minister, over the past week our society has been shamed. An attempted pogrom took place in the streets of Ballymena. Violence erupted throughout Northern Ireland. Children have been in the front line as victims and, it has to be said, as perpetrators. Children born here were made homeless and put in fear of their lives. So can I ask what inquiries your department has made into their well-being, whether they missed school and the situation for them now, what assistance is being given to them by your department?
So, Mr Speaker, I absolutely share the sentiments that the member has expressed. It's outrageous that we have been, over the past week, dealing with children who have been coming into school traumatised, showing all of the signs of trauma as a result of what has happened in our streets. But alarmingly, we're also dealing with some children who engaged in the rioting and attacked some of the school houses of the very children in their class. So this is an appalling situation, one which is complicated, that requires intervention. My team have been engaged with a number of schools as a result of the picture that we have had to deal with. We have engaged the emotional wellbeing unit within the Education Authority, the intercultural services, to try and provide support for these schools. To give an example, last week we have had a number of schools, Harryville Primary School and St Patrick's in Ballymena, where absence has been below half of the school in terms of attendance, and that is a clear problem, but it's also complicated by the fact that we are dealing with children in both schools that were engaged in this trouble, and children in both schools that were the victims of that trouble, and it's one that does require concerted effort. And to assure the member, I and my team are very much engaged in trying to provide that support.
Thank you. And can I acknowledge and welcome the fact that there was no equivocation or context offered by the Minister for the trauma that has been visited on children. So to that end, can I ask whether he, given his department has been engaged in a review of the curriculum, will be looking at the curriculum to ensure that children in Northern Ireland at both primary and secondary school understand that difference is something to be respected? Because if we have an issue where people are going out on the streets to commit acts of hate, surely the education system needs to be taking real action to counteract that.
And Mr Speaker, I've been hugely impressed as I go round schools where I see the many different newcomers within school settings in both controlled schools, Catholic maintained schools, integrated schools, and the work that goes on by the school leaders and the teachers to ensure that there is an inclusive environment where diversity is respected and indeed celebrated. And that is something that our schools have often been the safe haven within their communities, where outside of the school walls there have been challenges. What has happened in a number of these schools I find particularly alarming, and that is why that there needs to be support, and my team at senior levels have been engaging in respect of this. I take a very simple view. There is a time and a place to debate immigration policy. But whenever you are in Northern Ireland, and particularly whenever you are a child in Northern Ireland from whatever background, you have to be treated with that respect. You have to be supported and you need to be protected. And that has not been the case over the past week, and that is wrong. And I absolutely condemn what has happened in respect of these particular issues. So, Mr Speaker, I will do all that I can to support those within our school environments that need that support. Some of these young people have fled a war-torn area. My own family provided support to a Ukrainian family, housed in my parents' home 3 children housed in and went to school in Lurgan. Both schools that went out of their way to make them feel welcome, and they regard Northern Ireland as their home, and they will be here for many years to come, and they should be welcome here in Northern Ireland.
Eva Finnegan.
Minister, you will have heard today that Clady Tiny Tots has been declared unfit for purpose by environmental health. So would you consider convening an urgent multi-agency meeting on site with the representatives of Tiny Tots in Clady, Armagh?
The issue Mr McNulty addressed earlier in question time, when it comes to the provision of this kind of situation, it's not one that the Department of Education has a statutory responsibility for, but preschool settings, and where there are financial difficulties in preschool settings, there are emergency funds that the Education Authority can avail of, and I would very much encourage the providers in this particular setting to engage with the Education Authority, who do have responsibility to provide support.
Thank you, and I thank the Minister for his answer. But given the fact that the Tiny Tots have requested to be relocated to St Michael's Primary School, what can your department do anything in that relation?
Well, it's certainly something that when Mr McNulty raised this with me, my officials have engaged with the Education Authority. I am absolutely sympathetic to the position that they are in, but however, the Department of Education, when it comes to this kind of situation, does not provide financial support. It is one that the Education Authority are there to provide assistance on, and I would absolutely encourage the group to engage with the Education Authority in respect of this issue.
Paula Bradshaw.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Can the Minister provide an update on placements for children in key transition years with special educational needs requiring a placement for September 2025?
Well, Mr Speaker, this is one where I've been now personally engaging with schools where we've identified a particular need. We believe that approximately around 300 children, the figure changes as we bring more settings online, are currently in need of having provision met in September. This time last year, whenever I was in the Assembly speaking on this issue, it was around 450 children that were needing to have placements. We set about a programme of capital works when it comes to specialist provision. We have stood up significant amount of classes across the school estate, but more work needs to be taken forward in order to meet the current need for September, and the Education Authority have been working with my department to identify the particular areas that require that support and identifying the schools whereby we need support, and I now have been engaging with those schools to encourage them because this is a system-wide level intervention that is needed, and I need schools to be able to work with me, but also to reassure those schools that there will be the support provided to them when they make their schools open for additional capacity to be added.
Thank the Minister for his response. Obviously we were in a marginally better position than last year, but 300 pupils without a placement is 300 pupils too many. So can the Minister confirm what support will be provided to those pupils and their families as they may well be facing a scenario where there is no placement available for them in September? And how will the Minister assure this Assembly that we will not be facing the same scenario in the academic year ahead?
So I agree with the Chairman of the Committee and Mr Matheson in respect of this issue. We have provided, in terms of the number of places, hundreds of additional places. That of course does not diminish the fact that as we stand here today there are still several hundred children without a place that need to be provided with a place. We were able to do this last year. The system has been responding to that, and I want to thank those schools who engaged with my department, indicated a willingness to provide places, and we are investing upwards of around £70 million this year, on top of the £50 million that was spent last year to meet the needs. Special educational provision is where the first priority of capital call is getting within my department. It is the first priority for all of the teams within EA when it comes to taking forward the relevant procurement, business cases, feasibility studies, and it is the reason why other conventional programmes are not moving at the same pace because of the increased demand. So I can assure the member this does have the priority, both of me but also of my Permanent Secretary and the Chief Executive of the Education Authority as we seek to meet the needs that are being presented.
Minister, if he could provide an update in relation to the Northern Ireland Childcare Scheme.
Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the childcare scheme we've been able to take forward, obviously the 15% subsidy linked in with the UK tax-free allowance is drawing in around £18 million from we started the particular scheme. It has reached 16,000 children, and that's how many that have registered. But because of the funding that we were able to secure as part of the executive budget process, we have been able to expand now, and the executive endorsed the paper where that subsidy scheme will now be available to all school-aged children up to the age of 11. That's a 60% increase in terms of what we believe will now be eligible. It should take us to around 24,000 children being able to qualify, and I encourage people to avail of this support because it is making a real and meaningful impact in meeting childcare costs, and that is enabling particularly mothers to take decisions around increasing their hours if they wish to do so, or returning to the workforce because of the support that we are providing.
Ms McElwain.
Thank the Minister for his response, and he did say that 24,000 children would be eligible for this in the incoming year. Can you maybe give some detail as to the impact that will have on families?
Well, the impact is already being felt, and that's something that I've heard directly from parents who have expressed their appreciation for this scheme now being made available. But we do have much more work to take forward in respect of this. People called for a comprehensive strategy when it came to the early learning and childcare, and rightly we're taking that forward, and I'll present to the Executive a comprehensive strategy in the autumn. But we also felt that it was necessary to take action immediately, given the urgency around this. That's why we stood up the childcare scheme. It's why we intervened to support organisations like Sure Start. But it's also why we're implementing the standardisation approach within the preschool setting so that all children will get a full-time nursery place. Currently, the majority of children were getting part-time hours at 12.5 per week funded, compared to a full-time place of 22.5 hours. From September of this year, we will have equalised that so that it's a 50-50 split. We've now agreed through the Executive to bring 100 more settings into scope for September next year. So therefore, a majority of children will be in full-time places, but I want every child to be in a full-time nursery place, because that does make a real impact, both on the educational outcomes for children, because early intervention is what people talk about in theory, but often we haven't put it into practice. Now we are, but it also enables families to take those decisions around the workforce, and financially it is when the highest pressure points and costs start to reduce. But we need to do more. I'm not content with what we have achieved, but it is a good start, but there is much more that we need to do to support our hard-working families.
Paula Bradshaw.
Speaker, and thank you, Education Minister, for your answer so far. Minister, I want to pick up on the same thread as Matthew O'Toole, and it's really around the absenteeism and the fallout from the riots and disturbances. And I'm just wondering, to what degree is your department or the Education Authority actually recording the level of absenteeism right across the province? Thank you.
So there is a recording of the absenteeism as a result of what happened last week. I have the precise figures for the schools in the Ballymena area, for example. I know that there were 84 newcomer children in Harryville Primary School that have not been at school. I know the figures in St Patrick's. The level of attendance is sitting at around 65%. So we have that information. That is driving the interventions that we feel is necessary to provide support to those schools. So that is information that we will have, not just in Ballymena, but we have it in other areas, and we'll certainly be using that to inform the approaches that need to be taken to provide support to those schools.
Thank you, Minister. I wonder in that regard then, are you minded to provide any additional resources to the Education Authority's intercultural service to better support the pupils and their families? Thank you.
So this is one of the areas that we have been engaging, both the intercultural services but also the emotional and well-being services, where there needs to be support provided for those two areas, and indeed others, as we engage with the principals of some of the schools that have been impacted. We will make sure that there is support provided to them. We haven't quantified what that may be. At this stage, we're engaging with the schools. There are only a couple of weeks left in terms of this academic year, but in those conversations that we've been having, it's already been flagged up around September as to what the support will be whenever schools return after that summer break. So where there needs to be support provided, I absolutely will respond to the Education Authority positively to make sure that we can support people in this situation.
That concludes questions to the Minister for Education. I am marking Minister's homework, so Communities Minister answered 27 questions, supplementaries last week, and then the Economy was 16 and Education 16, so we'll see if Finance Minister can do any better. And I call Doug Beattie.